native
This
Floridian.
meeting is being recorded.
Sarika, a native Floridian who transplanted from Omaha, Nebraska 4 years ago. She is a daughter, sister, niece, aunt, cousin, friend, survivor of sexual and dating violence, and suicide attempt survivor who advocates for the voiceless. At the same time, changing the stigma of mental health care in the Black African American community. She attained a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from the University of North Florida and a Master of Social Work from Florida State University. She has served as the Associate Director of the Violence Intervention and Prevention Center for the last 3 years at Creighton University. She's built mutually beneficial relationships and campus and community stakeholders during her tenure. She is developing a brave space for trauma-informed and survivor-informed supportive services for the Creighton community and creating diverse and empowering events and educational campaigns to change the culture of consent and bystander intervention. Sarika is the owner, therapist, and empowerment coach at You're More Than Enough Counseling, LLC, a licensed clinical social worker in Florida, Nebraska, and Iowa. Her passion has dazzled through work with women and girls who have experienced trauma and struggle with self-worth issues. In her practice, her focus is trauma, power-based personal violence, relationship issues, and more. Sarika likes to spend time with her French bulldog, Bodhi, in her spare time, travel, read, visit museums, and brunch. This is Sarika Griffin.
Thank you so much, Angela. My name is Sarika Griffin, as Angela stated, and I'm excited and honored that I have the opportunity to speak with y'all today. So I would like to start with a question, and please put it in the chat. How many of you know someone, a friend, a loved one, a student, or even yourself, who have experienced some form of violence or traumatic incident? I'm pretty sure everybody on this call has. The truth is, survivor advocacy isn't just a policy issue or a job, it's a lifeline to so many people. It's about real people with real experiences. And today we're going to talk about how we can make that lifeline accessible to everyone. So first, I want to talk about my first advocate, who was my father. So picture me and my father um, when I was about 5 years old. He was my very first advocate um, in the school system. And he taught me from a very young age to stand up for myself no matter what. And what he created was a woman who became a dog mom, a survivor, an advocate, mentor, empowerment coach, therapist, student, alumni, alumna, and speaker for all these different occasions. I became more than he thought. And I like to start every presentation I do off with a quote. If we aren't intersectional, some of us, the most vulnerable, are going to fall through the cracks. Kimberly Crenshaw. So throughout this presentation, you're going to learn the following. By the time we leave today, participants will be able to define diversity in survivor advocacy and trauma-informed care. Participants will learn new ways to provide trauma-informed services to individuals they serve. Participants will learn which partnerships to develop at a campus or community levels to provide a wide range of services to our clients. We're not just here for a lecture. We're here for a conversation. So I want you to lean in, ask questions, challenge yourselves to think differently about survivor support. So I'd like to start off with a few statistics. LGBTQAI plus individuals are 2 times more likely to experience intimate partner violence. 34% of college survivors drop out due to trauma they have faced while in college. 90% of campus sexual violence survivors don't report their assault to anyone. Let's take a moment to sink that in. Let that sink in. These aren't just numbers. These are people that we see every day. These are people sitting in our classrooms, living in our dorms, and working in our communities. And we don't know everything they're going through. So how can we make sure we provide a welcoming and brave space to each survivor who may need assistance in our communities? And these are some other statistics that I find very important. Only 16% of male survivors report that they are assault. Survivors who receive trauma-informed care are 50% more likely to engage in supportive services. So let's talk about what this actually means. What does it come to your mind when you hear diversity and survivor advocacy? It's more than just a buzzword. It means recognizing that survivors come from all backgrounds, different races, gender, sexual orientations, socioeconomic statuses, and immigration statuses. Imagine an undocumented survivor afraid to report their abuser for fear of deportation. Picture a male survivor struggling to seek help because of the stigma associated. Think about an LGBTQ AI plus survivor experiencing discrimination while seeking support. We can't afford a one size fits all for advocacy. True survivor advocacy means meeting people where they are and making them feel safe no matter what situation they're in, as well as heard and empowered. Diversity and survivor advocacy ensures that advocacy efforts for survivors of trauma, abuse, or violence includes individuals from various backgrounds. Recognizing the unique challenges faced by different racial, ethnic groups, gender, sexual orientation, ability, socioeconomic status, as well as ability and immigration groups. Emphasizing the importance of intersectionality in trauma care to promote healing, recovery, by minimizing the re-traumatization. So first, an example, a university counseling center that provides multilingual therapy sessions for international students who have experienced trauma. That's a great example of how to bring this intersectionality into services on campus. 81% of women and 43% of men experience some form of sexual harassment or assault in their lifetime. And as I said before, if the services are trauma informed, they're 50% more likely to engage in services. So when you think about what comes to mind when you hear diversity and survivor advocacy, centering diverse voices and experiences, intersectionality of trauma-informed approaches, higher education as a key site for prevention and healing. When we're talking about this, something they talk about at the universities I've worked at in the past, is all these retention rates. But nobody ever invites people like me to the table to talk about the retention rates and what they're doing wrong and why people aren't staying. Because in reality, sometimes it's because of an assault and nobody addressed it in the way they should. And we have less prevention resources in other parts of the campus. Survivors are not monolithic. Identity, culture, and lived experience shape healing journeys. Advocacy must acknowledge the intersection of race, gender, sexuality, class, ability, and more. We think about these things every single day. That's why in my introduction, I like to talk about all the parts of who I am, because none of those parts can be separated from me as a person. When I come in as a survivor or a person who needs help or advocate, all those things actually make me who I am and affects the way that I'm treated or how I receive services in the community. Safety and empowerment are essential to everything. So before I even get started, I ask them, do they have a safe place to go? What do you need? What can I do for you? And also taking into consideration cultural humility and responsiveness to services. Recognize systematic barriers what survivors might face, as well as moving from the one size fits all approach. It's a sense of a perfect victim, and we can treat them all the same, which is not fact. It actually can be harmful, as many of you all know. So what I do, I create inclusive campus policies and programs that draw people in, training staff, faculty, and peers, building survivor center support systems, and partnering with department and community resources. With all these different things, it teaches our students that we do care for them, no matter what they're going through, not just about their academics. And the reason why survivors don't come forward sometimes is because culture and religious stigma, to stay quiet or keep it in the family. I grew up in the South as a Black woman. I was told what goes on in this house stays in this house, regardless of what was going on. So that ancient part of shame, or the child or the victim having to silence themselves to keep the peace in the family. It can be also a fear of law enforcement. Will they actually believe me what I'm saying? Will I be deported? When I call the police, would I be seen as a victim or a perpetrator? And that toxic masculinity as well. I hear this all too often. Men don't get assaulted, right? But when I was in Florida, it actually happened quite frequently. And men are less likely to report to anyone for shame of seeing their sexuality as being challenged. And discrimination to LGBTQ populations. Will they actually take me seriously? Or do they think I deserve it? And this goes even further with sex work and things of that nature and why people don't report. These barriers are real. And if we don't actively work to break them down, we risk leaving entire communities without support. Let's start talking a little bit um, about some discussions and scenarios that I have. So I'm gonna read a scenario to you, and I want you to think about well, just a minute. I'm sorry, I got a few more things. Um, so enhancing student retention and diversity and trauma-informed care equips faculty and staff to reduce re-traumatization, even though DEI has become a very dirty word with some of the culture we're in right now. We still have to hold space for those survivors. Simple steps for faculty and staff like trigger warnings and course material, as well as it makes a big difference. Making safe spaces on campus where all students feel protected and empowered. If we just help one student, one survivor, feel safe enough to seek support, we've already changed one life. So, for an example, professionals implemented trigger warnings and alternative assignments for students who may be traumatized by certain course content. At my university, I do a consent 101 every year that is required for freshman students to attend. But I also allow them to opt out if need be, for whatever reason, with no questions asked. The only thing they have to do is pop in to see me. And when they pop in to see me, I just provide them with resources just in case they need anything moving forward. Some of the program outcomes that I've seen is that students are more engaged and willing to participate. Faculty and staff are better trained and understand what happens more. and we learn that everyone is different. So when we think about maintaining the movement, keep survivors at the center of everything we do, ensure they feel seen, heard, and supported, reimagine safer, more inclusive campuses together. So here's our first scenario, and I would love for y'all to speak out or use the chat feature, whichever one you makes you feel most comfortable, because I can unmute you if you prefer to talk. But our first scenario is a survivor of domestic violence is hesitant to report their abuser because of fear of deportation. How can advocates build trust and provide resources without placing the survivor at additional risk? What are your thoughts? So some of the things I thought about when writing this prompt, building trust is the main thing. Thank you so much for lighting up the chat. Ask them how they are and want to best communicate, ensuring that resources you might offer or refer to them will be safe environments for them to go to. Of course, many survivors don't need access to documentation to get support, nor require reporting to undocumented status. Phone, email person are safe for them. An advocate should be clear about confidentiality and what it means and what the limitations are. Those are all wonderful things. So not telling the survivor what to do is a big part of it too. By allowing them to make their own decisions while providing non-judgmental, clear guidance, avoid pressuring them into reporting if they're not ready. We should also talk about legal protections and immigration relief. Inform the survivor about protections such as the Violence Against Women Act, U visas, and T visas, which provide a legal pathway for survivors to seek safety without risking deportation. Connect them with the immigration attorney what specializes in survivor rights. That's something I also do. I create a list of lawyers in my community that I can direct clients to for little or no cost, depending on the situation. Make sure we're partnering with community-based organizations to provide some of those additional assistance. Make sure safe shelter is available, safety planning, them understanding their full rights as a person in this country, regardless if they're a citizen or not. Making sure they know they have autonomy. And think about this. 4 in 10 immigrant women experience domestic violence, but do not report because of the fear of deportation, which is insanity to me. They feel like they have to live in that because of the threats that occur. The next one is religious stigma and seeking support. This is something I learned while I was here at Creighton University, which is a Jesuit Catholic institution. It's a little bit different. A survivor from a strict religious background faces pressure to remain silent about their abuse. How can trauma-informed services respect cultural beliefs while encouraging healing? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you, Barbara. Understand the cultural implications they face that prevents them from feeling safe and understood. Thank you, Melissa. Take time, slow down, and really listen to what they need. Understand and validate the client's feelings and concerns, offer them to connect with trauma IPV information, inform religious leaders if you have that resource. That's something that Creighton does very, very well. We have not only priests here, but we have other denominations, pastors, and other religious figures to assist students when need be. So when I have a student that comes into my office with a crisis of faith, I can give a warm handout and welcome over to student counseling services, campus ministry, or even confession to talk to somebody personally. Because I might not understand that part of it, but I make sure I have people who understands and can assist with it. When you have these strict religious background, sometimes it's a fear of ostrich, retaliation, or spiritual condemnation. Providers must create a safe space, non-judgmental space where they feel heard and validated. Understanding that community backlash may occur and what that'll look like. We have a lot of faith leaders on campus here. One of my big ones is trauma-informed care prioritizes survivors' autonomy. Providers should explore that allows the survivor to reclaim their voice without forcing them to go against their beliefs. It's not for me to judge or make any decisions for them. I just lay everything out, all their potential options, and I allow them to move forward or not move forward. But I always reassure them that they can always come to my office and speak to me, even if they want to scream because the sky's too blue. It doesn't have to be anything about the victimization. This is a safe space to be and just stand. I've also run into this a lot as well, and you have to walk a fine line over this. Some survivors may experience spiritual trauma due to where their faith was used to justify their abuse or silence them as children or young adults. Counseling that integrates faith and a secular healing approach can be very beneficial. Survivors should be supported in redefining their spirituality in ways that promote healing rather than harm. So, not walking away from the religion, but saying maybe it wasn't translated correctly in your home, or you didn't deserve that is a big thing. Not everyone believes that. Engaging in advocacy and education about abuse within religious communities. I love to have focus groups a couple of times a year with campus and community partners, religious partners who assist with things like this and how we can work together to make our jobs easier. Because if you know someone in the organization, sometimes it's easier to get connected on the back end. So let's talk about male survivorship. A scenario: a male survivor of sexual assault struggles with the stigma and is reluctant to seek help. What strategies can be implemented to foster a more inclusive and supportive environment? Any thoughts? This is probably the biggest population I get here, um, especially if they're sexually assaulted by another male or male presenting person, um, and they're happen to be straight. It's how would I say it? It kind of questions their manhood sometimes, and bringing somebody else in to support them. Because that's the only advocate on campus, and I'm a woman. Sometimes they prefer to talk to a man. So I have people in my back pocket to use. Thank you, Whitney, for saying reducing stigma through normalization. It can happen to anybody. So a challenge or misconceptions about sexual assault only affecting women. Make sure we share stories with consent and use images, media, and testimonials that include male survivors. That's something I try to do in every presentation I do. Train professionals and peer educators to recognize and address biases they may minimize male experience of sexual violence. Provide trauma-informed and gender-inclusive supportive services. Ensuring counseling and crisis intervention services explicitly say they're also open to men. Because sometimes they feel like they can't step forward because the assumption that it's only for women. Train staff on these unique barriers they may face as society expectations of masculinity. Here we do have a sexual assault peer education team, as well as a healthy masculinity peer education team. And our students do a lot of great programming together to talk about it on either end, to build that community and focusing on fraternity life, to talk more about that. Make sure we always use inclusive languages in our awareness campaigns. Not automatically assuming assumptions about the victim's gender. Thank you, Barbara. Recognizing vicarious trauma that a male survivor may experience and struggle with while in their healing journey. So I've been expanding outreach recently, making posters exclusively speaking directly to men with events that focus on men's health as well as their mental health for them to come in and talk to another man who might be able to assist. I introduce the person, then I step out and allow them to take the lead. We collaborate with men's organizations in the community, fraternities, sororities, community groups to promote conversation about the male survivorship. We have this organization here in Oakland I call 100 Black Men. They do a lot of stuff with us as well, with survivorship. Some of the barriers they may face if they're fleeing something like this, not all housing or emergency housing is male-centered or even allow males in it, with that assumption that only women get victimized. A lot of the shelters that I try to get men into, they might not be accepted because of their gender, because there's no separate housing. As well as the legal and medical professionals sometimes are not trained to handle male disclosures with sensitivity, and respect. And if they don't have an advocate with them to stand up for them, they might start feeling like it's their fault. Try to engage in policy and institutional change. Make sure we're advocating for all different types of policies at our campus, community, city, and state levels that support this population. Make sure all the experiences and presentations we do include men with those experiences. We also go into schools, workplaces, and community organizations to create safe mechanism for male support and survivorship. We're also starting a male-centered survivor circle next semester here. It used to be open to all survivors, male, female, or gender non-conforming. But with feedback, some of the male survivors prefer to be in a separate group with just other males or male-identifying individuals. So we're allowing them that space and creating that space for them to come in and feel a little bit more safe discussing it in the support group setting. Excuse me. LGBTQ plus survivor experience discrimination when seeking services, victim services. How can service providers, ensure equitable access for care for LGBTQ individuals? Is it anything in particular that we should be doing to help this population of individuals? Every year I try to do a culture competency training with the population, especially focusing on gender fluidity, non-binary, and trans individuals, to make sure I'm staying abreast of the different pronouns and things like that are being used. So I don't have to learn from the people coming in to seek assistance from me. Also understand and acknowledge their unique barriers. If they are not out to their family, that could be something what makes them not want to come forward or report because the person might out them. And it can cause a whole heap of another situation for them. So understanding that past trauma, family rejection. Thank you, Alexandra. Assuming what resources the person may need. Not assuming what the person may need. So let them allow them to talk to someone about it. Something here in our community here, I hope they're doing this all over the United States. In Omaha, I forgot the organization called, what it's called, but they actually have abortion doulas specifically trained to help walk somebody through an abortion who may be LGBTQAI plus. So especially those who are gender nonconforming or the pregnancy might be going against their gender identity, just to make sure they get the service that they need. They're more holistic, they're wraparound, they're phenomenal. And they're training a lot of individuals 24 and under. So I think it's great for these young people to be able to assist friends as well. Make sure you're using inclusive language, offering gender neutral bathrooms if possible. Ensure that intake forms allows individuals to identify their gender and pronouns accurately. One thing I do, I don't assume to know all the gender pronouns that are out there. I also leave it blank. They can write in whatever they feel and it can change. When I meet with somebody, I say, hey, I know you go by she, they pronouns. If you're ever feeling like more they than she today, let me know and I can start addressing you as such. If you decide that you start to go by it or them or he, let me know and I can assist with that as well. When my nephew was transitioning from female to male, he first started off with the pronouns it, they, them, and things like that of that nature before he fully went over to he. And that's something we allow him to do as a family. And we checked in with him periodically just to determine if something's changed and how we can best support you. But not everybody has those um, supportive spaces, um, or families to go home to. I love the strong vetting of service providers and staff. Invest in ongoing training and professional development. I love that. That's why I like to meet everyone before I send somebody to them. I prefer to do warm handoffs. I don't like to do cold calls or anything like that if I can avoid it, because I want to make sure that person is getting the best possible care. Because if they don't, then they might start thinking that I'm on the same playing field or thought process as this provider in the community. Make sure we talk about the inclusive language, offer gender neutral, excuse me, I'm sorry. Um, worry about being mistreated or outed. We must ensure confidentiality and protect their identities at all costs, especially in settings where outing them could cause harm. So I'm originally from Jacksonville, Florida. And it's a lot of crazy things going on in Florida right now. As someone who goes home frequently and was a big part of the movement there. Um, Also learning the laws and how you can be terminated in public school settings by using a child's preferred identity without the knowledge of their parents and things like that, which I think just is causing additional harm to those students overall. Like I said earlier, lack of LGBTQ affirming shelters, fear of the law enforcement, rejection or being misgendered, from rejection from faith-based organizations. So I make sure I have a couple of LGBTQ organizations in my back pocket just to make sure they have additional services and additional funding. So if they have that church hurt, as I like to call it, because of their sexual um, gender identity or sexuality, I like to find um, non-religious providers as well to take them to. Making sure we have representation, hiring LGBTQ staff, no matter what organization you work for, collaborating with the community organizations, seeking out the input of LGBTQ survivors, and they can generally create health spaces, safe spaces to meet their needs. Make sure we're following the policy enforcement and make sure we're doing what we need to do to enforce these things to assist our students. LGBTQ individuals are more than twice as likely to experience intimate partner violence than non-LGBTQ individuals. So let's talk about Black survivors and talk about those different components with that. A Black survivor of sexual assault faces skepticism and bias from both law enforcement and service providers, leading to the reluctance to seeking help. How do societal perceptions of Black survivors impact their willingness to seek help? Does anybody know? Thank you. Fear of being ID'd as the perpetrator. So as a Black survivor myself, um, it was very interesting to me reporting or seeking out help, afraid of being blamed, pain of not being acknowledged, fetishization, dehumanization affecting how they are believed. Of course, all those things. Black survivors' sexual assault often is combated by barriers when seeking support due to deeply rooted societal biases, historical stereotypes portraying Black individuals as hypersexual, aggressive, or less vulnerable than other populations. Skepticism from law enforcement will take a historic standpoint. Thank you. Not trusting systems, leading to victim blaming, disbelief, and lack of trauma-informed care, making Black survivors less likely to report assault or seek resources they need. It's also influenced by systematic racism and the criminalization of the justice system, the criminal justice system and healthcare institution. So it's systematic racism in those systems. Black survivors may fear being criminalized themselves, like someone said earlier, particularly if they're interacting with a prominently prominent white officer or service provider who hold implicit biases. The lack of culturally competent services can be difficult for Black survivors to find spaces they feel understood and supported. Community and family expectations also play a role. Many Black survivors worry about reinforcing negative stereotypes of Black men if their perpetrator is always also Black. They may also feel pressure to remain silent to protect their community from further scrutiny. Religious and cultural influence can further discourage individuals from speaking out, particularly if they're urged to pray through it, rather than seek professional help and intervention, which I truly think is a room for prayer, but sometimes you need more than just prayer. To address these challenges, it's crucial to implement anti-racist, survivor-centered practice in law enforcement, healthcare, and advocacy organizations. Service providers must actively work to rebuild trust by creating these safe spaces. Even as a Black service provider, I make sure I'm trained on these things as well. Empowering Black-led organizations, increasing access to culturally responsive resources, and educating the public to unique struggles Black survivors can face and help break these down. Systematic barriers. So my call to action for each and every one of you after this presentation, let's continue learning and having these conversations with people. Strengthen our partnerships with diverse communities. Advocate for policies that promote trauma-informed care and diversity in that care. Because survivors just don't need help. They need us to step up and fight for them as well. So I have some time for questions, if anybody have any questions. But I do truly want to thank each and every one of you for participating and being here in my talk. And here's all my contact information if you want to stay connected, need any assistance at any point at all. Thank you again for the opportunity. Can I answer any questions? So I believe in the Q&A, how can advocates educate campus partners on providing warm handoffs and encourage students buy-in to advocacy services on campus? My answer would be, I walk everybody to every service. I don't care if they know where the building is or if they've been there before. If they are coming from my office to see Title IX, I walk in there personally and introduce them to the person before I leave. I also ask them, would they like me to remain in the room with them? Or ask them, would you like me to stay in the waiting room until you finish so we can debrief, no matter what part of the process you're on? I also sometimes send emails to professors to let them know, with the permission of the client, that they may be going through something and may need some additional help. And not to ask them about what's going on. I can validate their concern and no questions need to be asked because of Title IX and clarity reporting principles and things like that. I try to tell faculty and staff at least 2 times a year to go in faculty and staff's meetings in different departments and things like that. Tell them where I'm located, drop off business cards, make sure I drop off brochures, and let them know they can walk somebody down at any time. If I'm not with another student, I will drop whatever I'm doing to speak with you. No longer how long it takes. Taking you to the hospital for a sane examination, taking you to court for protection order, taking you to the health department for STD screenings, taking you to accessibility services to get extra time on your test. Basically, I'm your new best friend on campus. The next question was, in your campus role, when do you notice the biggest gaps between what students with marginalized identities need from survivor support and what our current systems are actually built to provide, and the small shifts that could help bridge the gap? Something I noticed in the last 4 years working at a private Catholic institution is that the students don't necessarily see many people that look like them. Even though we have LGBTQ persons, people of color, people with different abilities, and things like that on campus, They don't necessarily know everybody's story, and some of their majors, they don't see people all the time. So not having those safe spaces for them outside of victimization to go to actually talk about the services. Um, Trying to get them more knowledgeable about what's going on the campus community, in our campus community, as well as in the community as a whole. So if you might not find your space here on campus, but how can I connect you with people in the community who may believe the same things you do or identify with the same struggles that you do? Sometimes we have this one fits all approach here, um, as far as support groups and programming here on campus that I've been trying to fill the holes in. Um, and also some of the ignorance associated with not understand these marginalized populations or populations that have been marginalized in the past, I would prefer to say. Especially with the things going on in our news media and the attack on DEI. A lot of people are allowing their biases to shine even brighter than before because they have the space to do so. But we have to still stand up and say we're not going to do that here. So small things that I do here is I put this is a safe space for everyone. I try to make sure I go to fraternity and sorority events, larger events, and just show my face so they know I'm here and what I look like. I speak to people on the mall to let them know it's people like me here as well. I pass out business cards. I do tabling. We do a Meet the VIP Center every year. We sit down and just talk to people and answer questions. So trying to be as more visible to the community overall. But thank you again, everyone. I know I'm a little bit early, and I'm sorry for that. I'm so used to having people talking back to me, and discussions normally take longer for the displays. I mean, the discussions and scenarios. Can I answer any additional questions for anyone? Or am I missing anybody's questions?
It doesn't appear that you're missing any questions, but I do see some gratitudes coming into the chat for you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for putting up with my voice today as well. I really appreciate that as well. And I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your conference. I truly love this conference. I come here every year. For the last, I believe, 5 years now, I've been coming to this conference, and it's wonderful. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen.